So what is a fake rule, and why do we want to break it? A fake rule is a rule that we all follow, but it may not be the best way to live your life, and it might not be the best way to work with others. So break it. Here at the Stupski Foundation, where we're spending down, we've found that the most effective way to do it is to break the fake rules of philanthropy. Welcome to Break Fake Rules. Some rules are meant to be broken. And when you break some rules, especially the fake ones, it tends to make society a better place. And that's what we're here to talk about with one of the great thinkers and doers in the philanthropic sector, Miss Carmen Rojas, joining us here via Zoom, which I understand is what all the kids are using these days. How's it going, Carmen?
That's what they say. That's what they say, Glenn. And since this is going to be recorded, look at this.
Look at you. Look at how you do. That's amazing. Nice work.
Thanks so much for having me.
Just so everybody knows, I met Carmen about 20 years after everybody else did, but about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I saw you on stage talking at a conference, and I was really impressed with how you were looking at advocacy, and what we did not know is that you were considering a transition from an organization you founded, Workers Lab, and made your way to today where you're leading the Marguerite Casey Foundation. There's so many ways I want to go into this, but let's talk about, I would say, one of the major fake rules that Marguerite Casey Foundation has broken. But one of the big differences, you have grantees, you have community leaders and activists on your board. And if I'm right, you don't have one family member. Is that correct?
Right. That's right.
What? I thought that in all of these family foundations and private foundations, it's about the family. It's about what the family needs. The rule is center the donor. Yeah. What's going on with Marguerite Casey? Why did this happen? Why are you breaking this fake rule?
Can I add some fake rules to your fake rule?
Oh man, there's so many. I don't even want to try to stop here.
So there is center the family. So you need to have a family member on a board to be effective or to meet a charitable purpose. You have to have a corporate representative or somebody with a deep commitment to corporate capitalism on your board to be a legitimate institution. You need to have somebody who is steeped in understanding what legal risk looks like. And somebody on your board that understands what that means from a reputational perspective more than a community impact perspective. And I was lucky. I came into an institution that never had family board members, never had corporate representatives. Marguerite Casey is a part of the Casey family of foundations, founded by Jim Casey, who led UPS forever until it went public. And when I joined the foundation, we had 7 people retire from the board. And it created a real opening for me to think about what kind of information, perspective, understanding would be most helpful for me to do this job. And it was really the understanding, perspective, and knowledge that comes from leading institutions, leading grantee institutions, leading public institutions. And so over the last 3 years, we've brought on scholars like Megan Ming Francis, who isn't just a scholar, but is a scholar of the ways in which social movements have been captured by philanthropy, and how philanthropy can often distort the mandate and charitable meaning and purpose and founding of nonprofit organizations. Political leaders like Julian Castro and Stacey Abrams on our board, because I understand that our political system is deeply impacting the communities that we hope to serve. So to have 2 people like them on the board is helpful for us to understand context. And then to have leaders of national racial justice organizations like Rashad Robinson from Color of Change, Marisa Franco from Mi Gente, to have them on our board so that we have a sense of what it means to run an organization. So we're never so far away from our grant recipients that we start to turn our nose down at their struggles, or it forces us to have a level of clarity and transparency in our grant making work that otherwise I don't think we would be able to make. So it is a fake rule, and that is how we broke it.
So let me give the devil's advocate position. Isn't this their money? So shouldn't they be able to do it the way they want to do it?
I'm clear that charity and justice are not the same thing. And I'm clear that rich people in this country have gotten rich because we have, in the words of Matt Desmond, accepted private opulence and public squalor. That rich people in this country have found ways to keep money at the expense of our collective well-being. So it's not as if rich people and families hand this money off again and again and again and again for an entirely altruistic purpose. They do it because they get a tax break, right? Like, and we exist as Marguerite Casey Foundation because UPS went public and a gift was made. And that gift allowed for a tax break. And I think that there's a real, we only see one side of the story, which is the giving of money, but not the getting of money. And for me, it's so incomplete to try to say this is your money. That's actually my money. It's our money. It's money that's not in our public system. We exist because our public systems, and specifically the IRS and our tax system, but across the board, have decided that it is better to keep the money in the hands of a small number of people as opposed to put it into our public systems, because oftentimes it's in public institutions and the investments that public institutions make through subsidy, through R&D, that corporations and individuals within corporations are able to amass so much wealth.
Right, right. I mean, I try to play devil's advocate, but I'm right there with you.
The devil doesn't need an attorney, Glenn. The devil doesn't need an attorney.
Wow, well said, well said, well said. But if he did, I guess I was just playing it. Let's get into something that you and I debate on occasion. My question to you is, what is your view on spending down? This foundation that I work with is a spend down. I know you don't necessarily look at it that way. You see a challenge in the spend down concept. What is that?
I would be open to spend down if we had clear examples of spend up. And frankly, like right now, we're in this weird moment where we do have a clear example of spend up, of public spend up. We're seeing the largest federal investment into communities across this country ever in US history. And I think it's important to note that a number of foundations across the country have supported the kind of organizing that led to this massive public investment. And so I have a real reluctance to put myself or to put Marguerite Casey Foundation in a position to spend down, because I don't see the spend up. And because we go away doesn't mean that billionaires cease to exist. Like when billionaires cease to exist, when the Koch brothers and the Waltons, when our opposition is actually legally barred from funding the kind of thinking on the nonprofit side that has become so common sense, then I would be okay with this going away. When there is a clear like regulatory regime that makes you being a rich person or leading a rich institution not having disproportionate weight or insight or power over how people live their lives, then I would be okay with going away. That's just not the reality that we're in right now. I see philanthropy, especially progressive or left philanthropy, as creating bubbles of oxygen in a moment in which there is very little oxygen in our atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an unfair question to ask you because you are running such a unique foundation these days. Unfortunately, you're a unique foundation. All right, so let me pivot us here a little bit. You just kind of let us into it. One of the fake rules, I think, which is pretty dominant in how most foundations operate, is they see philanthropy, like you said earlier, like charity. And so I define that as the Band-Aid for where government services stop. So a lot of foundations are giving grants for the purposes of greater or higher volume service to constituents who are not being served by the government. Therefore, there's kind of like a McDonald land statistic thing here where you're trying to figure out how many constituents have been served by our philanthropy.
Mhm.
This is not the way you look at philanthropy. This rule you have broken. So tell us more, if you don't mind, about
Yeah.
the Marguerite Casey theory of change and how you go about, kind of bucking this rule.
I think for far too long, we have come to accept, and this is like from liberals to conservatives, we've accepted as common sense this belief that government doesn't work and shouldn't work for us, and that a smaller government is better than a bigger government, than a more robust and safety net providing government, and that the private sector actually is better poised to meet people's needs than the public sector. And as we have been, as a sector, hyper invested in everything from charter schools to public house to nonprofit housing, on the public sector side, two things I think have happened, maybe three things have happened. One is that the government doesn't feel the need to provide it anymore. So
Right.
we're like, oh, public housing is shitty. I'd rather live in affordable housing. No, actually, we should demand, as my
There it
little
is. There it is. There's your thumbs up. Nicely done.
we should demand better public housing for everybody.
Yeah.
So on the one side, government has just stopped investing in it. We have made normal, and this is a cross-partisan, this is not just a Republican, this is a Democratic endeavor as well. The second thing that I think is more pernicious is that rich people, leaders of corporations, donors who establish foundations like this, come to believe that we are able to take the place of government, that we have a mandate, that we are accountable, and we're not. We are private institutions.
Yeah.
When a foundation or a nonprofit provides something, it is the same kind of privatization as when a corporation and a private actors provide it. It's not, it may feel better, but it is still privatizing a public good. And the third and the most pernicious for me, Glenn, is that we start to, in people's imagination, limit their expectations and belief that our government should be working for them. And so then everyday people are like, of course government sucks because there's no housing in my neighborhood. Of course government sucks because every library is closed. Of course government sucks because I have to bus my kid 30 miles away from where we live in order for them to make sure that they go to a good K through 12 school, or I have to send them to private school. Of course government sucks. And we all pay taxes. And so there is no greater mandate, I think, for a foundation than to start to reset these three things. Make sure that people understand that government works. So in Seattle, we have been supporting the Seattle Solidarity Budget, which essentially brings people along in the budget making of the city of Seattle. This is your money. How would you like to spend it? What are your priorities in your community? So bringing people along in the rulemaking, being able to support them as they start to advocate for government to provide more of these resources for them. So throughout the South, we fund an organization called Southern Economic Advancement Project that's helping communities access these federal dollars and training people in cities and organizations to understand like the rulemaking of how to get these dollars. But frankly, like most importantly, for me at least, is being able to provide a competitive public option for shitty private goods, right? Like the state of California on insulin, right? Like the fact that the state of California is providing insulin, that is the perfect example of competing with a shitty private option with a quality public good for something that people need to live. And so as an institution, that's where we're living. We're naming government as a key protagonist in shaping the way that we live, and not as our opposition, not wanting it to be smaller, but instead making them the target of our dreams and aspirations.
Wow. You just had a whole spiel there that I wish we could spend 2 hours on, but But today, what have we picked up on? There's some big fake rules that you're pushing against, which is why I love you and I love working with you on so many things.
Same.
Now, number one, really going after this issue of communifying your board, making sure that you've got players in the game who really understand the needs of the communities that you're trying to work with. Second thing is looking at government as a provider of great service and making sure that it's responsive to the communities that it serves, and that requires those communities being in a place to demand the kind of services that they should, and not have to rely on the private option all the time. Just a couple of big ones right there. Just knocking fake rules all over the place. It's always great to work with you, Carmen. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great.
Thanks so much for having me, Glenn.
And that's it for Break Fake Rules, at least this episode. We're going to be back again with another one very soon, so get ready for it.
Next time on Break Fake Rules, hear from Rachel Pritzker, a democracy and climate change philanthropist and chair of the Democracy Funders Network. She'll talk about her role as a donor building coalitions and countering polarization on some of the most contentious issues our country is facing. We have so much more to share with you, so follow the Stepsky Foundation's YouTube channel and join the conversation with me on LinkedIn.